Okay, let's go to our guest. Ross, can you hear us?
I can hear you and see you.
On the World Food Program, who's joining us from Rome. Ross, without further ado, I'll give you the floor, and then we'll take some questions. Go ahead, please.
Sure. Thanks very much, Stefan. And I think you've covered a few different things of quite relevance to what I have to say this morning as well. Just to say that, the hunger crisis in Gaza has certainly reached new and astonishing levels of desperation. And we see information we have is a third of the population are not eating for multiple days in a row. This includes women and children. And as I think is through our assessments that have been released publicly, a quarter of the population are facing famine-like conditions. We see severe acute malnutrition surging, so more than almost 100,000 women and children are suffering from severe acute malnutrition and need treatment as soon as possible. And as you noted, Stefan, at the outset, in some of the reports, people are dying from lack of humanitarian assistance every day, and we are seeing this escalate day by day. Clearly, food assistance, from my perspective, but humanitarian assistance more broadly, is the only solution at the moment. The markets are non-functional and nothing is really moving inside Gaza. For us, there are a set of minimum operating conditions for us to operate. And we need these to be in place in order to move effectively, to work effectively. This includes crossing points into Gaza, includes proper routing inside Gaza itself so we can move independently and at choice. It includes the reduction in waiting times and approval times. And you noted, Stefan, from our deputy executive director, his anecdote of waiting for 16 hours to move from one location to another. And these sort of conditions really create a lot of problems on the ground for both civilians and for our operations. These minimum operating conditions include more than 100 trucks a day that we need to move in order to have sufficient scale to alleviate the desperation that's there. And until we have that scale of assistance, there's going to be really, really difficult to control the situation on the ground. We also need to have no armed actors near food distribution points, near our convoys, and near the movement of those convoys from one place to another. We need to be able to reach people where they are, not in otherwise predetermined locations. And I would say above all, Stefan, that we have had agreements in principle on these things, but we have not had adherence to these in practice in Gaza itself. And this is really where the breakdown is. And it's where we see incidents like you referenced yesterday take place. And so for us, in order to operate, the minimum are these conditions I've just outlined here, but adherence to those conditions by all parties inside Gaza. I can only highlight the critical nature of somebody, I think there's someone online. I can only highlight the critical nature of the ceasefire and the need for a ceasefire at the moment so that we can move effectively. Yesterday's incident is one of the greatest tragedies we've seen for our operations in Gaza and elsewhere while we're trying to work. And it's completely avoidable and it's an absolute tragedy. So, Stefan, I'll just start with those opening points. I'm happy to answer any questions on details. Thank you.
Very much, Ross. Edie?
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. A couple of follow-up questions from the attack yesterday on the WFP convoy. What is WFP's estimate of how many people were killed and injured? We've seen reports of, I believe, 80 people killed, and which have been questioned by the Israeli authorities. And second, do you have any indication that any of this was organized by either Hamas or gangs? Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ross. Go ahead, Ross.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Edie. So we cannot independently verify, casualties associated with this incident yesterday. When I spoke to the team immediately after the incident, they had information that there was at least 40 people had been killed and there were a larger number of injuries. But then you've seen further reports coming out of other reports since then. So I don't have a final number on that, but indeed, I mean, one is too many, and certainly this is far, far too many. It's an absolute tragic incident. And no, I mean, there is no evidence that it's, as you say, organized by communities on the ground or anything. I think what we are seeing here is the impact of a really desperate crowd that were clearly aware that there was going to be a movement of our food convoy from the crossing in Sikkim, and were anticipating that, and they moved en masse towards a checkpoint. And so the desperation is people are putting their lives on the line clearly in anticipation of being able to get something from a truck. So that's, I think, is what precipitated this incident.
Thank you. Then Gabriel.
Thanks, Ross. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Sorry, I've got a couple of questions, and you can come back to me if it's too many. You mentioned the agreement for 100 trucks a day. On average, how many have you been getting in? And also there seems to be the issue of how many operational trucks there are within Gaza, given that you have to unload on the Gaza side of the border and then reload onto trucks. So how many sort of operational trucks do you have in Gaza? How many are inoperable that can be fixed and you just need the parts to fix them? Fuel is, I guess, still maybe an issue on that front. And then when it comes to security, what sort of security has the UN used? Does the UN use, if any? If you could just give us a little sort of roundup on that for your aid convoys and warehouses. And then, sorry, last one, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been pushing the UN to collaborate. Obviously, we all know where the UN stands on that, but have you had any discussions with the GHF, and have they explained to you how such collaboration might work if you were to go down that route? That was my last one.
Go ahead, Ross.
Okay. Thanks. I'll take these. A few questions there. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, in terms of, since the middle of May, we've only been able to move less than 10% of what's needed in terms of number of trucks. So rather than counting trucks, that's kind of what we're looking at as a metric, and so clearly that's not enough. And during the ceasefire earlier this year, we were moving more than 200 trucks just at WFP food assistance alone and that's the level that's needed. I will say that we have enough pre-positioned outside of Gaza to provide assistance for the entire population for 2 months if we can get a ceasefire and if we can move. So we have the capacity outside. We also have, to answer your question on inside, we do have, of course, spare parts and other issues are always there, but we do have the capacity, the logistics capacity, if we have those operating conditions to move. Fuel is an issue, of course. So in order to be able to operate in the context of a ceasefire or a context where all of these minimum operating conditions are met, we need obviously fuel to run the vehicles. We do not use armed escorts for our convoys, and further, we do not have any operational relationship with GHF. And I think I'll revert to all the other briefings you had on this. We of course talk to, in every context, we talk to many people, but certainly we do not have an operational agreement with GHF.
Benno?
Thanks, Ross. Benno Schwinghammer with the German press agency. You mentioned nearly 100,000 people suffering under acute malnutrition. Can you give us a clearer picture what that means? How long do you estimate would it take for people to starve to death in Gaza on a large scale if nothing changes?
Yeah, thanks, Benno. I mean, severe acute malnutrition, the mortality risks are very, very high, especially for young children. So they need treatment immediately. We are seeing reports, and many of these are, of course, anecdotal reports, but lots of reports of people dying of starvation now. It's very different for an adult versus a child, what it takes to starve to death or to die of acute malnutrition, but we are seeing many of those reports. I don't have more specifics than that, and I can just refer you back to some of those assessments we've done on the percentage of the population in famine, for example.
So you see reports about starvation now, and you deem them credible.
We certainly see reports of, and we hear reports of people that are starving to death, and we certainly have the numbers of people that are suffering from severe acute malnutrition, as well as our monitors and our monitoring information that tell us, as I mentioned at the top, the number of people that are skipping, including women and children, meals, food for multiple days in a row. So certainly we have evidence of the severity of the situation.
Gabriel, then Dulcie.
Thank you, Ross. This is Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera English. A follow-up question on the incident that took place yesterday. You said that your convoy, as it approached the civilians, came under fire from Israeli forces. My question is, did you guys know that the Israeli forces were there, but there was an agreement that they would allow the safe passage of this aid, or did you not know that they were there and you were surprised by them? When I say you, I mean the WFP convoy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel. Yeah, I mean, I think these are known positions, and so known routes of trucks and known locations of checkpoints. So the issue, Gabriel, is that when our convoy is moving away from the loading platform through the routes inside Gaza, they have to pass through checkpoints. Civilians are anticipating these trucks to arrive, and they crowd the checkpoints. When they crowd the checkpoints, then there are incidents that happen around those checkpoints. So I think that's, I don't have more granular detail than that, but just to say that is what has happened in this case with this checkpoint outside Zikim.
Thank you. Dulcie, then Pam. Then.
Hi, thanks very much. It's Dulcie Leinbach from Pest Blue. I did want to go back to the notion of collaboration with GHF, because they're holding media briefings every morning now, and they paint quite a different picture from what the UN is saying and how UN defends itself by not working with the GHF. And they say, they even direct their remarks to Cindy McCain saying, give us a call, basically, we want to talk. So my sense is they're getting a little more aggressive about, or at least concerned about these killings and their aid hub operations. And they also say things like, there are 100 UN trucks waiting outside and the food's rotting, and, how can the UN let this happen? So if you could just, I know the UN says that the GHF is not using international humanitarian law obligations. But what about the possibility at this point working with them because they never say how they would work with you. So that's the big question. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, I probably am repeating points you've heard before, but certainly as a humanitarian organization, the work we do and upholding those humanitarian principles are vital for the trust that people put in us. Civilians inside Gaza put trust in us, and of course, people everywhere around the world that we support. So, we talk to many people in the course of our work, but we only have operational relationships with people that uphold those values and principles by which we are able to operate. And so that is our stance. We do not have an operational partnership with GHF. We understand, of course, we know what they are doing inside Gaza. They are working there, and they are working in parallel to our operations, and that's fine. But we do not have an operational relationship with them.
Thanks, Steph, and thank you, Ross. Follow-up, I had a different question planned, but follow-up to this last question. clearly the GHF rejected UN aid in the beginning and now is coming back around to working together. What exactly, when you say international law, we all know what that means generally, but what specifically would you want them to do in order to cooperate? In other words, not be armed, not shoot at people come by, what specifically? And then my original question, if I may, was just what's happening when people are injured at the sites? There are not many hospitals operating. Are there medics? Is it Red Cross or anyone there to deal with the wounded? Thank you. Pamela Fogg. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Stefan, I'm getting a bit of echo here, but I think I've got the question. It's fine. So just working backwards on your last question, I mean, I don't have the specifics of the medical facilities available. So of course, people are going to the facilities that are available for assistance, but I don't have any details on that. And, on just to go back on GHF, I mean, we have the capacity to provide all the support and the scale up necessary in Gaza to meet the food needs of people there. And so that is our position. We certainly have proven that, and during the ceasefire, and of course, prior to that in another context. And so, we are certainly working with many partners in many contexts, and all of them align with our humanitarian principles and our values and our way of working. And so I think that is our standing position on this. And I won't comment specifically on what GHF would need to do. I'll actually refer you to them, and they can probably answer that question a little bit, or at least expand on it. I think our position is quite clear on this. And thanks, Stefan. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Ross. This is Minglu from China Daily. I'm looking at the Integrated Food Security Phase Identification, IPC, and it seems like the entire Gaza Strip is still currently classified under emergency, which is Phase 4, from May 11 through the end of September 2025. Given the current situation in Gaza, would you expect to update this classification soon?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Indeed, I mean, we have the entire population in Gaza under emergency or higher levels of hunger, and actually 1/4 of the population is under IPC Phase 5, so facing famine-like conditions. And I anticipate that number to grow just given what we are seeing on the ground. So we do update the IPC regularly, both the assessments and the forecast that you're referring to there. So we will have an updated one in the future, yeah.
Thank you. We're going to go online. Magdalena from Bloomberg. Magdalena, go ahead. Magdalena, go ahead. Go ahead.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
They asked my question, so it's all right. Thank you.
All right. Abdelhamid.
Mr. Ross, I hope you hear me. This is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic Daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. I have a question about the story of Yasser Abu Shabab and his gangs that Israeli managed to recruit, finance, arm, and do their job under the title of Popular Forces. How much you come to encounter these gangs, which is working for the Israelis? How much information you have about them? And my second question, Mr. Ross, that so many Palestinians dying indirectly due to lack of medicine, for example, cancer patients, kidney failures because they cannot do the dialysis, out of famine, many children and others are dying. So what do you think the exact number of the people who died in Gaza, directly or indirectly because of the war? And the last question, I know you're still trying to use the Jordan bridge to bring food into Gaza. How much you are successful to keep that path through the Jordan River to get the food into Gaza? Thank you very much for the question, for the patience you have with me.
Okay, thanks. Abdel Hamid. Stefan, I answer this one?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Thank you. I've got a lot of echo on the line, but I got most of the question. Certainly, Abdel Hamid, we are aware of the gangs and the context of operating in Gaza. I do not have specifics of that, but just to say that one of our, certainly of these minimum operating conditions I mentioned is that we need to have no armed people, no armed groups in and around near our convoys or our food distribution points, and that's all armed actors that I refer to there. And certainly, you know, the presence of armed and criminal gangs is a big risk factor for us. I don't have details. You mentioned the number of people died. I'll refer you back to some of the other figures that are out there on that. So I don't have anything with me. And just to say on your last question on the crossings into Gaza from the outside, what we're asking for, what we're pushing for, is the ability to use all of those crossings. And I think in the context of a ceasefire, we will need that in order to move sufficiently from all directions into Gaza. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take two more short questions. Stefano, short, and then
Thank
Michelle,
you.
short.
Thank you, Mr. Rossa. This is Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York, Ital Press. In the way you communicate with the people in Gaza, I mean, the way your organization is able to communicate it, do you think that must, you maybe have to change some way, or maybe you're already doing, but can you explain to us how you explain to the people when you're coming, or how you can distribute it, also to prevent that the people, will do what did before, then find themselves in danger and so on?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we actually have a fairly robust communication mechanism to reach out to civilians directly, but also to the community leaders, etc., to pass the message on. We continue to use that. Unfortunately, it is not preventing what we've seen yesterday, and that's because of the desperation of people. They know that the risks are there because, of course, they have seen it firsthand, but they continue to crowd in these locations where there is live fire and where there are armed actors and where there have been previous incidents. And so it just gives you, I think, a real reading on the level of desperation an individual must feel, a decision that they must make to go out in front and potentially be fired upon in order to receive a bag of food.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back to me. On GHF, when it comes to collaborating with the UN, I'm just going to keep it blunt. We're just trying to work out what they would have proposed or what they have proposed to the UN. Does it involve the UN having to pay GHF for security, for aid convoys and aid distribution? Is that what they're proposing to the UN? And then when it comes to getting your 100 trucks in a day, why isn't that happening? What's the simple answer on why that's not happening?
Yeah, thanks. So starting with your last question, I think it is all of the reason we're not able to move at scale there is all of the things I've mentioned on the operating environment inside Gaza itself. So, the time it takes to move from one location to another, the difficulties in getting approvals to move from a loading zone or from a platform into Gaza, the routes being taken, etc. There are many, many factors there that is really, really limiting what we can do. And then, of course, it is our own operational decisions about the risks that we are having to take and the risks that we put civilians and our staff under with some of these situations. So that is the reason we're not able to move at scale, is because these minimum operating conditions are frankly not being met, and even when they're agreed, they're not being adhered to by actors on the ground. On your first question on GHF, I don't have the specifics of what they are asking from the UN. I think there's probably more, you know, in the press of what they're asking of the UN than there is actually specific outreach to the UN, frankly. So, you know, as I said before, we work with many partners in many countries, and we work with partners that uphold the humanitarian principles and allow us to operate in a safe and effective way for the people that we serve.
Ross, I'm going to ask for your indulgence. We're going to squeeze in one last question from Al Jazeera. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Bisan Abuquaik from Al Jazeera Arabic. Just a quick question. What sort of message was sent to the Israelis after yesterday's incident, given that the Israeli forces were the ones who actually fired at the crowds?
Thanks. We have regular contact, of course, and there was a lot of dialogue yesterday and continued dialogue today as follow-up to that incident. So I know there is follow-up happening in terms of investigating what happened, and we're anticipating some response to us. So I don't have more details than that at the moment, but indeed we're waiting for that.
Very, very much for your patience and for doing this on very short notice. We very much appreciate you and all your colleagues on the ground. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.